Hey everyone, welcome to GamerKitchen. After many requests, we're finally going to make tacos. But instead of the usual fare, we're going to mix it up by making fusion pork tacos. These are absolutely delicious because the meat is cooked in a lot of Latin flavors, while the garnish is a ginger and sesame slaw. You guys are going to love it. Let's get to it.
For this recipe, we'll need a large sauté pan to cook the pork, a large serving bowl to mix up the Asian slaw, another sauté pan or baking sheet to heat up the tortilla shells, and our trusty cutting board and knife. The first thing we'll do is cook the pork, but before that we'll have to prepare a few vegetables. Take half an onion and slice it vertically following the contours of the onion. Then rotate and slice across the onion to form a medium-sized dice. Then mince a few cloves of garlic, as well as a few slices of the canned jalapenos. After the vegetables, take the pork and slice it thinly. I'm using pork loin, and the easiest way to find this in the grocery store is to look for packaged pork chops. You might only use 2 or 3 chops from the package, but you can always freeze the rest for future uses. Once all the pork has been sliced, heat a large sauté pan over medium heat. When the pan's hot, add in the oil, then the onions. Cook until the onions soften, then add in the jalapenos and garlic. Stir and cook all the ingredients together for about 30 seconds, then remove them from the pan. Now, back over medium heat, add another round of the oil, and once hot, place the pork into the pan. You might have to separate the pork with forks, as the slices like to stick together sitting on the cutting board. Once separated, generously season the pork with salt and black pepper. Continue to cook and stir the pork until it starts to brown. Then add the cumin and chili powder, as well as the vegetables we just cooked. Stir everything together and then pour in just enough water to submerge the pork halfway. If this looks familiar to you, it's because we're now effectively braising like we did in episode 8 when we made the Middle-earth meat pie. If you recall, braising is a 2-step process. First, we use the active skill braising initial sear to give the pork a nice brown color. Then we use the second active skill braising fundamentals as we add just enough liquid to submerge the meat halfway. If you need a refresher or want a more in-depth explanation of braising, check out episode 8. Once the water's added, you can choose to lid the pan. Without the lid, you'll just have to add water more often throughout the braising. Whichever you choose, still reduce the heat slightly, then it's time to prepare the Asian slaw. Prep the cabbage by removing the outer leaves and then cut it in half. Then cut each half again to form quarters. This helps make the cabbage more manageable. Remove the core and then thinly slice the cabbage. After slicing, cut through the cabbage again in the opposite way to make a small rough dice. After washing and peeling the carrots, cut them into coins. I always like to cut the thicker ends in half so all the coins are mostly the same size. Once finished, add the carrots to the bowl. Then take a handful of the cilantro and after rinsing, cut off the majority of the stems. Then roughly chop the remaining leaves and stems. Trim off a knob of the ginger, peel it with your knife, and then finely mince the ginger. Lastly, after rinsing the green onions, chop them up fairly small, including the green bits. While you're preparing the slaw, keep an eye on the pork and add a bit more water if it's cooked down. The goal is to keep the pork halfway submerged until we're ready to serve. Also, there's really no set time to braise the pork. It's really just as long as it takes you to prep the Asian slaw, so no need to fuss about the duration of the braise. Now, with all those ingredients in the bowl, measure out the rice vinegar, lime juice, sesame oil, vegetable oil, and drizzle a bit of honey over all the ingredients. Also, measure out the toasted sesame seeds. When buying these in the store, make sure the label says toasted. Uncooked sesame seeds will lack the flavor of its toasted brethren. Also, as a last step, liberally add the salt and black pepper. Stir and taste the slaw, adding more salt if necessary. Then, if you have an extra sauté pan, start heating it over medium heat. Once hot, griddle the corn tortillas in the dry pan. You could also lay out a bunch of the shells on a baking sheet and heat them in the oven. Either way, you're looking to crisp the corn tortillas a bit, which makes them much more flavorful. While you're heating corn shells and flipping them every so often, the pork should start to cook away the last bit of water until it's mostly a thick sauce. At this point, also try to break up the pork with your spoon or spatula. Since we've been braising the pork, the moisture should help tenderize it and help the pork break apart more easily. To make the taco, portion out some of the meat onto the heated corn tortilla. At the last minute, I decided to add some chopped lettuce, in addition to the generous amount of Asian slaw. The lettuce is optional though. The taco should be a wonderful fusion of the spicy yet savory pork prepared using the active skills about braising we learned from episode 8. The Asian slaw will complement the pork by adding crisp, fresh, and bright flavors. This is really a contemporary recipe that shows off your skills you've learned in GamerKitchen so far. Like usual, hit me up with any questions you have, and good luck cooking. We'll see you next time.